Right.
this is the one that fixes the problem.
Let's see. Cancel. What? Why is it listed as unlisted? Edit. Unlisted. Public. Done. Save. Okay, stream is live. Let's get that link going. Copy link.
Okay.
I think this should fix it now.
Okay, yeah. It says that we're live with the part 2.
Yes.
Oh, shit. Goddamn.
Oh god.
Alright.
This.
Let me go to chat for the second one.
Yes.
Yeah, because I can't put a link in the other one.
Yeah. Yeah, the old link is dead. Here's the new link.
Well, today we maybe learned something.
Today we learned something. That's the best thing we can say.
I learned that YouTube has a chat pop-out window.
Not hearing any echoes. Thank you, Goose. So I learned not to have a second window open with the stream running and then forget about it. That's embarrassing, but we will move forward.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
some folks will come back.
Yeah. If not, this is a good beta test. Can you hear Lion as well, everyone?
Yeah. How am I sounding, y'all? All 6 of you. Hell yeah.
Cool.
No loops, and we're both in.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for bearing with us, everyone. I apologize for... Wow, thanks, Ross. I apologize for all the technical issues. This is the beta test. So, expect further issues.
It's the beta test. We should have had Cross on. Beta!
Beta! Okay, so welcome to the debut of Echoes from the Void, or from the Rift. This time with hopefully no echoes. So, the sort of the stream intent behind this is to do a slightly different approach to sort of what the other stream content cycles that are going on. So we're taking a bit more of a focus here on the JP side of things, but it's not going to be a full cycle review. It'll be much more so myself being a new player. My account's about 1 month old. We'll shortly go over an account review just to see where I'm at. But we're going to be taking a new player perspective, so myself and Lion, who's our resident veteran player, and we'll sort of be comparing and contrasting both of our different accounts, how they approach content, and what we each felt was the best fight in the cycle, and how we approach that fight, because we have very different rosters, and so we'll have very different approaches to that. Now, this is also intended to be viewable by the GL player base. I am basically a GL player. The only difference here is that I'm now started playing JP. So, and I think this first episode, especially for any GL only players, will function as a pretty good primer for what's supposed to come in the next 2 to 3 weeks with the FR era. So that's the premise of the show. We'll see how things go moving forward, if we'll rework that slightly, but that's just the general intention. Lion, did you want to add anything there?
Not especially. I think you covered the kind of the general gist of things pretty well.
Okay, perfect. So we will slide into the account overview, and I think this will be a segment that I will I'll sort of do quickly at the beginning of each show, just to provide an update on where my account stands, because and this is sort of tying into the broader concept, but a lot of other sort of live service games have a new player account video series that some content creators will do, and I personally wasn't able to find anything quite similar to that in DFFOO. So I also wanted this to be sort of like an archival of you have a new account, here's your account progression and how you're able to challenge, like, clear content, how long it takes to sort of catch up into, so that you, like, what it takes to lose that quote unquote new player status and just become either a global or in this case, just a JP player and not a new JP player. So to start things off, I started at the tail end of Golden Week. So that was about a month ago. It was right at the end of Jack's cycle. So I had about 2 days to do all of Jack's banners and Divine Bahamut, or not Divine Bahamut, Divine Odin, which was fairly rough. Yeah, raw. It was right at the end of Jack. So if we go to my party screen, here's party. So these are all the characters I have built so far. So we'll go from the bottom and go up. So all these sort of losers down here at Crystal level 70, I just have their LDs for. Rydia, I have her full kit, including FR, it's just not built. These following characters, so this row of 8, Setzer, and the twins, I have their LDs. I've built up Agrius and Rem for healing, and Kimari for tanking, and then Cease, I have her full kit built. I have Cyan and Raijin for LD calls. I have Iroha's full kit, except I don't have her BT plus to green. Selfie was the character I chose. So when you start JP, I'm not sure if this is true in global, you get 1 free LD. So I chose Cease, not Cease. I say Cease. So the 1 free LD that I chose was Selfie. I am starting to regret that decision. When I'm sort of done talking about this, maybe we can go over that Lion. But I feel like Selfie is really good for the fights that are relatively easy. But for the more challenging fights, they tend to make them launch immune or delay immune. And I've personally found, and this is also a skill issue, that my Selfie burns out before I can get the run done on the harder fights. So I am thinking maybe had I stuck to more of a Gladio or any sort of tank, that would have been more viable, especially due to the lack of tank options that we've had since the beginning of Iroha's cycle. Hello and goodbye, Excalibur. No problem. We wasted the first half hour on technical issues, so that was fun. I have Fusuya fully built. I have Renoa fully built, but not greened. I am probably going to green her. I'm just waiting to see what the next BT cycle will be. And then the rest of the characters I have fully built. So I have Onion Knight fully... Oh, I didn't want to click that. I have Onion Knight, Jack Garland, Ash, Machina, and Beatrix. So those are that's basically where my roster is. I have about 9 units that are usable in about a month. So that's where I've stood. I've been able to clear most content aside from the Cloud of Darkness fight and the Old Spiritus fights, which we will get into sort of later down the line. Lion, do you mind sort of going into where your account is?
Yes. So I've been playing for a while now. Longtime JP players may remember this. I started the game in, I believe it was August of the year that Caius was released on JP. because there was a big thing that they were doing. It was a campaign where you would get a free pull every day on a banner. I think it had every character in the game on it or something like that. So I started playing then, and I've had my periods where I've kind of fallen off because I've either been busy like I have been lately, or um, I just haven't been feeling like playing that much, and I would just log in and do my dailies, or uh, most of my gaps are due to things like just spending a lot of time playing on global and grinding the shit out of um, like summon boards and stuff like that. And this is pre Mog Pass days. As for my characters, I do follow a little bit of a different plan on JP than I do in global. I basically use this as kind of like a test account. I am free to play on JP mostly because I can't figure out how to actually spend money on the game, which is probably for the best. But basically, I pull for most things, just try and play around with them, see what I think. Stuff that I like, I tend to pull for on global. One of the problems with that is that a lot of the times I like a lot of stuff. I have looking through here. Navigating these screens when you can't read them is a little more difficult.
We'll get to that a little bit down the line.
Only a little, especially since they're adding new functionality for filters and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So looking at it, kind of leaving it strictly to like FR units and things like that. I've only got a few that are like fully built, which I'm seeing. It looks like Dorgon, Aranea, Core, Hope, Vayne, Iroha, Lillicet, Seymour, Braska, Yuna, Beatrix. A lot of the typical big names. Ursula has been kind of carrying me through a lot of stuff, at least the earlier stages. I don't have a desperately large number of burst characters though. But like I said, I pull for most things, so I have a little bit of everything, if that makes sense. I have a fair assortment of tanks and supports and yada yada blah blah. I think one of the bigger mistakes that I made, and for the love of God, if you're watching this, please don't make this mistake. When Ultima weapons were introduced, I went the get one of everything route, and that was a terrible decision. I know a lot of players right now, I think, are sitting on their I think 4th or 5th, maybe 5 out of 5. And I am sitting on, let me see here, 3. Because I have been investing in, I've got a fully maxed out staff, greatsword, and unique. I just finished the staff, but I've also had, I started leveling throne and fist, and I don't know why I did this other than possibly a stroke. The bow, because Rosa. No, Indo, I was not proud of my 0 out of 5 whip. Christ, that was such a bad idea. I have been able to clear most content. I think the only stuff that I haven't finished right now is Spiritus, Rama, as well as the Sice Lost Chapter.
Cool. So I think what we'll do before we get into what's on my screen right now, which is the COD fight overview, I wanted to do a quick Q&A with you on I guess, FR era, some of the changes I've noticed compared to what's going on in global currently, and also just the nuances in characters that you, at least I haven't been paying attention to currently, that do rear their head once you get to FR era.
Okay.
So one of the things that we had discussed a little bit earlier, which I'm not a fan of from a new player perspective, but I can understand from a dev perspective, is the way they changed how you acquire the BT nuggets when you clear, I guess, the Lufenia mission now. So the way it works up until FR launches is for any legacy content, so like all the lost chapters and all the intertwined wills, as long as you clear the Lufenia, you get the BT nuggets. Now, as far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong, the way it seems to be working now is you have to use a full synergy team when you clear the Lufenia to be able to get those 5 BT nuggets.
Yes.
Right. So as a new player, this is atrocious when you're trying to green your units, because it's very strange when you go from all the Lufenia plus fights and you clear them and you get the resources, into suddenly you get into the FR fights, which all the earlier ones are very easy to clear now if you're using a somewhat current team, which I was able to do. And then I didn't get the resources for it, and I was a bit perplexed until I realized why. The big issue is that it's hard to build up sort of your BT units. That's why right now I'm sort of waiting to BT plus or green, I should say, my Renoa, because I just don't have the mats for it anymore. Maybe I shouldn't have gone, so ham. I have 3 greens already. I have Jack, Onion, and Ash, but it is a bit of a shock, and it wasn't something I was aware of until I actually got there. I understand from the dev perspective, and this had been a conversation I think brought up on a ranting hour or TCC many months ago, about how the devs just give away too many free resources, and this is a way to curtail that. I just don't know if it's the best way of doing it, because you still get them, you just need to have the units. And the issue is, if you could pull for the units, I would have no issue with that. But there is no way for me to get those synergy units. So like, there is no in-game way for me to extract those materials, even if I wanted to, unless I carry like a 35 CP Cryo to the Cryo intertwined will. It makes it a bit difficult. I don't know what your perspective is on that, or if you have a differing sort of perspective on that topic.
Correct me if I'm wrong, which I may very well be.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't the Lufenia get through it with a full synergy team? Is that not one of the limited time missions?
Oh, okay. So
I don't remember how it works for permanent
need a proper JP player here in chat to come. Okay, that's not what I meant.
Wow. What the fuck?
Yeah, God. Well, I mean, you're the vet here. You should know the answers to these questions.
Hang on. Let me take a look at some bullshit. The problem is that I've got all of this stuff done, so I can't go back and look.
I know. I believe I did go back, and I was able to clear a fight, and I got it. I don't think they're limited time anymore. If they are limited time, then my criticism still stands, because it's removing permanent content, but I feel less bad about it, because it's not like it's there and I can't get it. It's just not there.
Let me scroll through some stuff, see if I can find. And there's one. No, okay, yeah, it looks like it is permanent.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's just base Lufenia. It's not even Lufenia Plus, which at this point, looking back at it, you're basically trying to get 3 characters through, like Cosmos or Chaos would be right now. even those characters built or even moderately built, it's not so difficult that you can't even if it's slow, just make your way through it, leaning on your your really strong calls. Looking at it, I see you've got the Raijin, you've got the Cyan, you've got Rydia, so you can basically survive whatever you want, and you have a ton of damage. Obviously, it's going to depend on the event, but these things aren't so desperately tanky and or have so much health that it's not something that you can still do. Maybe you've got to invest a couple of power tokens or whatever to get a 15 or a 35 for somebody, but I have carried my fair share of deadweight characters through these. It's really not that bad.
It's not that bad if you have a somewhat developed roster, but if you have 0 of 3 of those units,
Oh, I've done that.
through the that you have
yeah.
you have nothing for any of those characters.
Mm-hmm. I forget which event it was recently. Let me look at my party screen. There was some recent event that was. Let me get rid of this filter. Down. Get rid of it. There we go. There was something recent where I think the strongest weapon that I had for the character was like a 35 for one of them and an EX for another one. And then I had like an actually reasonably built character. I think I had their LD maxed and they were still on base EX. You can still get through these Lufenias.
So I'll give it a shot. Maybe I was just assuming that my team was not built enough, and so I didn't even bother to try. Yeah.
Folks in the chat, what was the thing that had cater on it as synergy? Like within the last couple of weeks. Because I distinctly remember I was using cater and was hating every minute of it because cater sucks. At least my cater sucks.
No, I would say cater sucks. I'm not a fan of cater.
You are indeed.
Yeah.
Ability that music is echoing.
I don't think it's echoing. It is P3 music.
This is basically the same thing as the Chaos challenges, though.
Yes.
And when those were first introduced, when we got BTs, a lot of people were really upset about that as well. Like, oh, how am I supposed to get through this? But at the time, Chaos was the level of content that we were doing. And for the next, I think, 2 or 3 months. And at this point, Lufenia is so insanely power crept that it's like, okay, even if you just level your characters up, like their crystal levels, they're still going to be doing 3, 4, 5 HP attacks, every turn and stuff like that. You've still got your calls that you can use for HP damage up and things like that. Like, you can still get through this.
So I will give it a shot and maybe reflect back on this point, or like circle back to it next show, and maybe see, like, once I've actually tried some of the content and I can say, okay, maybe I was off base with my initial remarks. I will just make one sort of final point on this topic and then we can move on. Is that the material you got from the Chaos Challenge was 1 BT token. So if you missed any one Chaos Challenge, it's not the end of the world because you need 50 anyways. So it's 2% of your way there, right? For these BT nuggets though, it's 1/4 of an ingot. So like which I know you need 3 ingots, but you get 1 from booking anyway. So like it's at the least it's 1/8 of the way there. So it feels like it's more impactful, each one that you can't do. So it feels worse. At least that's my perspective. But again, I'll circle back to this point once we on the next show to sort of see how I feel on it once I've actually done more trials with it, equip my units with ultimate weapons, build them up a little bit.
Prepared for my response to this to be skill issue.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's fair. It's also a lack of will. Like I don't want to to use a 35 CP unit to clear a
Yeah, it's real
Luthanian
rough.
mission. Yeah,
It's rough.
yeah.
It's not fun, but it's doable.
But moving on to our next sort of Q&A item, and then we can move into the COD fight proper and have a little review on it. I think one of the things I've noticed a lot now that I've actually played FR Era, and it may not be reflected immediately for what Global's getting in 3 weeks. You can sort of confirm that or not. But as you get new FRs, you start to realize, and based off their FR conditions, you start to notice a lot more nuances in kit that you never really cared for before. The one I'll point out, because I noticed it right now, because it's what I'm trying to do and failing at, is the way Beatrix's counter works. Is your party needs to get hit. If you evade, she will not initiate her counter on enemy phase. So when I was building up all my units to clear this cursed Cloud of Darkness fight, which you can see on screen, I did technically clear, but failed miserably at the requirements. There's a lot of units that are defensive, but evade. So I built up yesterday Cease and 8 because I was like, oh, these are good off-turn units. They'd synergize well with Beatrix. Only to realize that they're both evasion-based units. And so if the enemy attacks either of them, Beatrix will not do her follow-up, and her FR will not proc up further because I don't have a Thunder Enchanter to make the off-turn damage proc on other units follow-up attacks. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that correctly, but that's sort of one element where you can have off-turn damage dealers, but if they're evasion-based off-turn damage dealers, they function differently, and their FR functions differently. Like you would not build them around a I guess like a Beatrix style FR where you sort of want to get hit. And that was something that I had never really cared for, at least up until this point. Like if you dodge the hit, you dodge the hit. Who cares how you dodge the hit, unless you were worried about guaranteed hit or something. So that's something that FR Era has really made me appreciate. I'm not sure if that's a similar sentiment that you've had, Lion.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
From the maybe not the very beginning, I would say maybe the second month of Shinryu, it shows a lot more. When you're looking at the characters that you get in the first month, you've got Kane, Kryle, Braska, Camlino, Titus. What was the last one?
Is it? It's not Reno. Reno's too
Was
early.
it Ursula? Or was Ursula a...
What's
me... Oh. I've got the forecast.
faster than me?
In a tab.
Braska?
Dash was the other one.
Yeah.
When you're looking at these things, there's not that much nuance in what a lot of the characters do. These specific characters, that is. Kane does range damage. He launches. He can self-delay. He uses a special Brave command. He has an instant turn move. But at the base, when you're just looking at it face value, you're like, okay, I need to do range damage. I need to do launches, right? That's all you're seeing. But as you start playing around with this more and more, and I think one of the first times that I looked and I was thinking about this and I noticed it, and this was, I don't remember exactly when this was, but I distinctly remember it was the end of a Ranting Hour episode. where we got the trailer for Aerith's FR. And we were all watching it, and what we started talking about was, okay, because one of her conditionals is battering the party, and one of the other ones is using a modified Braver HP attack. And in order to maximize your gains, you want to be doing both of those things so you can kind of double dip on the bonus.
Right.
And so it was, okay, well, here's a character that's got the modified HP plus, but they don't battery. Here's a character that batteries, but they're not really going to be using those special commands. Here's a character like Kieran, who can do that, but he doesn't really have force enhancement, so he's going to be charging the gauge a little bit slower. And the more you look at it, you start to notice that once you're conscious of the fact that this is something you should be paying attention to. Something that I've been doing, and shameless self-plug here, something I've been doing in my recent when you pull videos, because I'm thinking about these things as I'm looking at these characters on global now, which I wouldn't have done before, is I'm looking at, here's all the individual things that they can do in some way, shape, or form. Like Sice, for example. Some people are going to say, oh, you should skip her, wait for FR, or she falls off really hard, or I haven't seen her in any YouTube videos, no one ever talks about her, save for Shinryu. Whatever reason they have for skipping, they're not really paying attention to what she does. Looking at her, she has, I don't think this is necessarily relevant for the first one. She's got Brave Retain, she's got Evasion, Self-Healing, she has Darkness damage, she has off-turn damage, and this one is worth noting, she has off-turn damage that is not a counter, because I don't know if that ever comes up in Shinryu, but it has definitely come up in Lufenia for some of these orbs. She has all of these different things that she can do. Some of them you can take advantage of with different things, and some of them you can't. She has an overhead. I don't believe she has a stacked buff, but once you start paying attention to literally what a character does, you can start, piecing together ideas for teams, which I think is really, it's fun, but it's also really satisfying when you're sitting there thinking, hey, here's this fight, here's the FR I want to use, who can I put with them to try and make a semi-cohesive team to clear this stage. Like looking at your team that you have here on screen right now for the Cloud of Darkness fight, I can see Beatrix being super useful.
She, yep, very.
My
very
God,
useful. Yes.
I can see why you would run Setzer. I don't know which FR you're triggering, but I can see a decent, like outside of this stage, like a team of Ash, Machina, and Beatrix, because you cover a lot of your bases and you've got a ton of off-turn damage. You can trigger, I think, all three of their, each of them can trigger their own, not their own, the others' FR conditionals.
They can. There is a bit of clunkiness between the three of them, in terms of Machina wants melee-based follow-ups or like melee-based attacks, which Beatrix has on her special HP plus, and so does Ash. But you don't want to use Ash's HP plus in a counter comp because it's 3 turns wasted of your FR. So like they do work well. It's just there are some there's a bit of a give and take in terms of what you're trying to do,
Yes.
while also
And that's the nuance.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
So you start to pay more attention to exactly how things work mechanically, which is a good way to, and a lot of people might get offended by this, it's a good way to become a better player.
That's 100% true. As someone who, I guess my only claim to fame within the community is the challenge content creation. Um, and I do clear most of my challenges. I would say that I'm, at least somewhat good at the global side of the game. But when it came to actually doing the difficult content within JP, and we'll get into, I guess, a bit further on when we talk about the COD fight, the distinction between hard and not hard and garbage time. It does take a lot more thinking about your units and what your units do, and sort of why you're picking the units that you're picking, compared to, especially garbage time, but even compared to Lufenia, where even in like early Lufenia Plus or base Lufenia, as you usually only needed one orb ticker, and then sort of everyone else to supplement around that. And now you really do want to build your team around your FR, and it is a pretty new way to play, and a much more engaging way to play. It does involve a lot of setup costs in terms of like pre-game planning, but the execution is also a lot more difficult than it seems. It's not just run a gauge charger, max your gauge, hit FR, and win. Some fights are like that, but for the fights that really matter, that is not sufficient to be able to win the fight.
That is correct.
Yeah.
It does not work like that.
Yeah, which I learned very harshly, which I guess we could transition now, sort of into the Cloud of Darkness fight itself. So this is sort of the premier fight of the Iroha BT cycle, and I think it's really the only one that realistically deserves discussion. Of the three fights, there was the Cloud of Darkness, which is the Act 3 finale fight. There is the Machina Intertwined Wills, and there's the Fusoya release. I think we can both agree that the Machina Intertwined Wills it just rolls
Best
over.
fight in the game.
Yeah, best fight in the game.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah, it's not good.
What team did you use for that?
I used Machina, Machina, Jack, and Onion Knight.
Oh,
Because my roster was less developed at the time.
that's fair.
Yeah.
I see that you've got Beatrix Blued, and that's a good idea because she's a fucking stellar character.
Yeah.
Especially when she has her FR. That's who I used. I used Beatrix and Gladiolus. I don't even remember who my third character was. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. The fight doesn't deserve airtime.
Yeah.
Disappointing fight. When people in general say that garbage time ends at when FR begins, they are correct. But and I know people have started pushing back on this talking point, but that does not mean that there are no easier fights anymore. There are still easy fights in Shinryu era. It just means that it's not free, right? That's the term BC uses a lot. It just means the fights aren't free anymore. So don't go expecting that every single fight is going to be this super brutal, tough give and take. You're still going to get easy fights. Machina IW is a very clear example of an easy fight.
Yeah, don't bring that into the first Shinryu because you will get smashed.
Yes. The Fusoya event was a little bit more interesting, but I brought synergy because I don't have a fully developed roster, so I was able to bypass most. I guess it's main mechanic. I'm not sure what team you brought, Lion.
Yeah, you would say that. I kind of don't remember exactly who I used. I distinctly remember I used. Hang on, I put a picture in one of the Discord chats. I did use Fusoya, but I don't
Cecil's
remember.
uncle.
Yes.
Yeah.
from contains image. One moment, please.
Yeah. So in terms of ranking, I think we'd both agree, from best to worst, we would say Cloud of Darkness, Fusuya, Makina IW.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that the Fusuya fight also had like stuff going on.
Yes.
Where the bosses had these, they had their own like AOE instant kill mechanic, and additionally the AOE like percentage gravity HP attacks, and they would just spam the shit out of them during force time. And a lot of the fight was you trying to essentially keep them from acting as much as possible, or using your team in such a way as to essentially rush them down before they could do that. But even then, they had turn warps to kind of prevent that, so you had to plan ahead for that. I really liked that fight. Okay, I'm looking at it. I used Seymour, Porum, and Fusoya.
Oh, I forgot your Seymour guy. Ugh.
Hell yeah.
How?
I think I did flub the execution, and I ended up having to use 2 FRs instead of just 1.
Yes, I have not been able to do a successful 1 FR clear of any fight so far. But again, there's roster limitations. There's a steep learning curve in terms of me jumping into the middle of an era. So yes, it's both skill issue and roster issue. But I do like that there's sort of an ever-present goal of further optimizing your force time. I think it's like a very fun little game to play within the game itself.
I enjoy that more than trying to, 1000 IQ no turn things with Noctis or whatever else. Like this, it's more satisfying when you pull off a really, really good force time.
Yeah. I mean, there's like I would never say that the Noctis thing isn't a valid way of playing the game. But this is it's a much more natural way in terms of optimizing force time compared to trying to do a 0 turn run. Like the game incentivizes you to build up your force efficiently. There is no real incentive to force time. That's much more like a player-based challenge, and that obviously varies from player to player. So I think in terms of gameplay optimization, the force system in its entirety is a very, very good way of getting that out of players. It can lead to very large variations in run time that we haven't quite had in prior eras, unless you used very specific units, like if you brought a Layla or if you brought a Selfie or something along those lines. So I do think that that's one possible con of FR, where there is such a large, or there can be such a large discretion, or not, discretion's not the right word, but variance between player clear times. But I do think the trade-off is worth it.
Would agree.
Yeah.
I think that people should spend less time worrying about how long it's going to take them to clear, and just focus on figuring out how their force time for their given character works, how you want to use it properly. This is a period of the game where if you want, you could pull 5 or fewer FRs and probably clear maybe not all content, but most content. Actually, yeah, you probably could clear all content with just 5. And so if you a lot of people are going to want to take the path of least resistance and just Camlino and Titus their way through everything. Um, but then some people may feel as though, I didn't get this character. Oh my god, I can't clear any content. This is horrible. Um, really, this era is all about learning how to use the tools that you have. Um, and it's more engaging. Maybe not, the really shitty fights like Machina, but even that fight, if you try and play it straight, it has a lot of mechanics that, if you look at it right now, the way that we play the game would be super frustrating. Like, the AoE slow aura and the attack downs and the delays and things like that. Whereas if you're playing to these mechanics and taking advantage of them, and using that to optimize your force time, you're going to have a lot better time. And I said it before, it's more satisfying. Today I learned kind of how to play Minwu. I'm sure Sinewave. Oh man, I'm sure Sinewave would maybe not be proud of me, but I did my best with using him in the Cloud of Darkness fight. Let me go back to my team for this, kind of bringing it back around a little. Yeah. I used. Whoa! Don't go lumping me in with him. Shinryu. Oh, there we go. So for my team, I used Aerith, who, she's basically there to heal and occasionally keep us from getting debuffed, and that was about it. Along with Minwu, Core, Iroha, Gladiolus, and Seymour. And basically my approach to this, my strategy was to... it took me 3 FRs, which was a little annoying. I knew going in, a couple of the mechanics, like the tentacles having their... Cloud of Darkness having the HP gate based on killing the tentacles. Mm-hmm. And so that was fine. But I burned an entire FR just getting her down to, I think I got it to 78% or something like that.
Yeah, the first
one
threshold.
Was horrible.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was really fun taking advantage of, when the enemy force time is above 30%, yeah. You get a 2-turn delay after every one of your actions.
1 turn.
And here I am.
Right?
I'm pretty sure it's 2.
Oh. Okay. Regardless, you get delayed.
Yeah. And here I am using a character who puts traps on enemies, refreshes them after they hit these traps 5 times, and then the FR is a 10% tick per trap. So I think on both of my Minwu FRs, I was over 700%, and doing like really solid damage. And this is kind of your team building aspect of that, because while I'm leveraging that, I've got my Core and my Gladiolus out, and both Core's follow down and Gladiolus's counter both tick that force time condition as well. So honestly, I preferred just not having any turns and letting them kill themselves.
Yeah. And
it was really entertaining and fun. It took me, I think, 2 hours to clear this, because I fucked up my run the first time I did it at around 35%. And I ended up eating a force time attack because I had subbed out Gladiolus. I think I had Aerith in the party at the time. I ate a force time attack, which is it's some damage, but then she hit me with the AoE delay, and then the AoE HP attack and just wipe me. But ultimately, this was a really fun and engaging fight, even though some of the things that were in it were kind of annoying to deal with in the moment, like the brave damage reduction based on physical or magic. The HP gates I really enjoyed because you couldn't just plow your way right through the fight. Like, you had to engage with these mechanics. Like this, more fights should be like this.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've been struggling with this fight. Again, my clear that's on screen sort of showcases that I did take 99 turns, and I had 61,000 HP damage taken. Thank you for the sub. So what happened with me? So in my clear, I do not have Setzer. I have Kimari in his place. And what had happened was my Beatrix did not have her special HP plus buff up. I don't remember what it's called. And one of my entire parties wiped to the FR attack around the 20% mark. So I was already about an hour and a half in, and I just decided I'm going to just clear this fight. I didn't want to restart at that point. And I did manage to clear it. It took me 4 FRs. I think 3 is pretty reasonable in terms of what you were saying, Lion. I don't think there's too many 2 FR clears, and the ones that do, they seem to involve hope shenanigans, at least from what I've seen. I could be wrong. But I also took the off-turn damage approach to this fight. And I think that's the most, that is the one sort of that the game pushes you to via COD's FR mechanic. And I guess this is another thing we can sort of slightly diverge onto. But I think the FR gauge, when implemented well, such as in this fight, where at the 30% threshold you get delayed, and at the 60% threshold there's more reductions. I think that's better than the current Lufenia Plus system of just more reductions at a certain HP thresholds, because there's a much more give and take of the boss fight itself. One thing that I had to do in the very beginning of the fight is I don't have a gauge charger in this team at all. So COD would always get their first FR attack before I could even get my force time up to 100 to initiate my force. So what I would do is I would let the entire force time go off, go through the force phase, and then build back up to the 30% threshold so I could get the delays going on my team, because I wanted to be delayed to get more off turns with my force times. So I think that is one example of the force system. I don't know what it's called. But the enemy force gauge mechanics, adding another element to the fight itself, when implemented correctly. I know there are some fights that don't really involve the force gauge too much, which is a bit disappointing. But I think when it's done well, this far exceeds. It's another way that exceeds the Lufenia orb mechanic. So that was just one thing I wanted to bring up as a short aside. But to say that I did go the off-turn damage route. The reason why I have Setzer here in the second run that I've not been successful at so far is, as you were saying, Lion, the boss has magic and melee resistant phases. And it starts off in a melee resistant phase. So what I would do is I would let my force time get to full. I would swap in Machina and swap in Setzer, apply Setzer's fixed dice, and then swap Setzer back out so that Machina's force time could go off. Because in a 3-target fight, whenever Machina counters, he increases the force gauge by 25%. So if everyone's getting delayed and there's 3 enemies going off, that force gauge just cranks up super fast. So I was able to get to past 800 easily every force time. One of the things I definitely noticed and is a persistent issue in my runs here is the lack of any sort of HP damage mitigation, which is why I originally brought Kimari, but he just isn't cutting it in all other areas. And no sort of proper debuff evasion, because at each threshold, the boss will either inflict you with a framed blind or a framed confuse, or both, and they can be devastating. Like at one point, I had my Jack in FR in his BT phase, and I pushed him past the 50% threshold, and I got a framed blind. And since debuffs don't go down during your burst phase, that burst phase was just gone. I just lost, and it's not just a burst phase that you lose. You also lose your force time. So it's really impactful, these sort of threshold attacks. And I noticed that a lot of debuff calls, such as Raijin in this case, it's sort of difficult to time in a fight that you're getting delayed in, because you can get delayed, and those 2 turns on that Raijin LD call can fly by just like that. Same thing with Iridia call as well. Like, you're going to get attacked 3 times very, very quickly. Additionally, you don't want to be using low damage calls during your force time if you can avoid it, because you want to use those turns for your damage. So it is a very delicate balancing act that's going on, and I've sort of been playing around, adjusting my team. I brought in Elena this time. I'm going to try using that for debuff evasion. I've also had an issue with too many framed buffs. So there's a lot of intricacies to this fight. And I think this is a really good example of difficult content that, sort of gates new players in a way, because it asks for quite a bit of different elements from your roster, but is also like clearable. I was able to clear it, but it doesn't feel cheap. There's a couple fights that we've had that were difficult, but not in a fun way. I think this is a very good example of difficulty done right. There's lots of mechanics. There's lots of things that's being asked of you, but there's different ways to play it. Like, one thing to note is that Onion Knight is the featured FR unit for this fight, because he can switch stances between magic and melee. That's sort of Onion Knight's thing. It is a bit strange that he's featured in such a delay heavy fight. It does make sense because he can pull up your unit, so if you do need a unit sort of at the ready, he can help you with that. But it doesn't feel the smoothest in terms of a unit synergizing with their fight. I do see what they were going for, but I mean, it also doesn't help that I'm going for an off-turn route, so there are other ways to doing it, but I just feel like Onion Knight himself may not have been the best unit for this fight. Overall, I've really enjoyed this fight. I've put probably 6 hours into it in terms of failed runs and restarts. That might be my one gripe with the fight. It does run a bit long. So when you die after like 40 minutes, it's a bit salt-inducing to have to go back in. But overall, I think this is pinnacle DFFOO fight design. And I hope we get more fights like this going forward. Which, at least from what I've seen, we do have in JP. The Spiritus fights, for example, are another great series of fights. Some may consider them to be a bit too restrictive, but I think are also really, really good endgame fights that are deserving of being endgame fights.
I think the only one that I really had an issue with, just because it's so unnecessary, is the Pandemonium one.
Yes.
Where Reigns was the BT unit, and below, was it 20%?
Like 29 or 20%, I believe.
At one of the HP thresholds, and I don't remember which one, you could no longer do damage to the boss unless it was during a launch. Which obviously they're trying to sell Reigns really hard. It's really depressing.
Mm-hmm.
because by that point, you're probably running on fumes, depending on your team comp, and it's just ugh. And also, I did not have Reigns' burst, uh, so yeah,
Yeah,
not a big fan of that.
yeah, I totally agree, and also because uh, I believe Reigns is the only character who does multiple HP dumps himself in a launch. Like all other characters, or not HP dumps, but dumps or brave dumps or whatever. But
Correct.
only does HP attacks in the multiple HP attacks in the air. Everyone else just does the one. So you're very limited in terms of your damage output. You can only sort of do 2 HP attacks per launch if you're not running Reigns. So it's extremely restrictive. What some people I've seen do is get right up to the threshold with your FR at 1 turn left, and you do your big attack there, get it down as close to 0 as possible, and then sort of build up your force time and get one last force to push it past that last 10 or 15%. I'd agree. It does feel a bit too blunt of a way to sell Reigns, and it becomes too restrictive because there's really only one character who can do that. And at that point, it goes from being very creative to sort of being extremely narrowing in terms of your roster choices.
I mean, I'll be honest. I did not get my clear for it.
Mm-hmm.
I got my what is it, B rank, and I said, you know what, I can accept this for now. It's because I don't have the tools that I need in order to get the W, and that's fine. You can always come back and beat up the fights later. Maybe in the case of Reigns, the blinders are on a little too hard with trying to make him seem really good, because this is the second time that they've done that. His release event was super restrictive. You could clear it with other characters, but it was not easy. I'm sure that there are clears out there right now of non-Reigns fight wins on this, the S ranks, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure there's an Anna Crow nuking it clear, or many of them. But yes, overall, I think the sort of one of the elements that's very interesting about DFFOO is when you see people run different comps, and there are some fights like Reigns Pandemonium which feel like they maybe go too hard in one direction. But the other Spiritus fights, I have yet to clear Ramu or Brothers, but they're pretty engaging fights, especially this Ramu one. It seems to be less difficult than the other two, but it's very interesting the phases that the boss has. We can go into that a bit further next show, where we'll cover all of Ash's cycle. But I do think both Spiritus and at least the 6 warrior quests are a very good endgame, despite some flaws that we may have with a specific fight here or there.
I'm looking forward to seeing what we get for, I think, not this next event, but the next burst event. Shouldn't that be Transcendence? Should it be tier 13?
The last one was Seymour, correct?
Get at me, chat. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it would be then.
It is. So I'm interested in seeing what they do for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have not cleared any Transcendence so far in my account, so I can't speak to tier 10, 11, or 12. I don't have enough of a roster built for that yet.
12 is hilariously easy.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. I will give it a try. I need to see what the crystal colors are.
If you get the option to pick up a burst or FR of your choice, it's less.
Yeah, I was thinking Celeste or Gladio, but I guess maybe so less is better.
Gladiolus is also insanely good.
Yeah, he's more of like a budget unit option.
I started replaying the COD fight while we were talking.
Okay, well, I think this is sort of a good point to pin the conversation for now. In terms of this stream, because I think we managed to get the Q&A done from the beginning. I really wanted to make sure we had a little bit of a conversation right before we got into Force Time for any GL players. Thank you, Indo, for stopping by. And we also got to go over the Iroha cycle in a bit more detail than I was expecting, but I also think it was good to sort of see how the stream goes. So I do want to thank everyone for stopping by and bearing with us, bearing with me specifically for those first 20 to 30 minutes of technical issues there. I will remember to close all of my Chrome tabs before I start the stream again, so we don't have an echo issue moving forward. I want to also just do a big shout out and thank you to Lion here for bearing with me and being my wonderful co-host for this. And I also want to thank Cross 13 for being sort of the inspiration for me to join JP, and Sinewave for helping me out with all the Abyss challenges. So thank you everyone for stopping by. Lion, if you have any last words as well.
Yeah, I just want to say big thank you to BC Black Nero for being such a good God, make me say the word inspiration. I hate you. To both start working on doing content, and also to kind of step my own game up in terms of not only gameplay but engaging with the community. And I really appreciate the love that you have showed us on your stream for the Sice Lufenia a little earlier today.
Yeah.
And also previously on a ranting hour. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, fully also want to say, myself, thank you BC for shouting us out. Thank you Raw and everyone at the live stream as well for doing the shout outs. Thank you specifically to Mino Spellgood for being the reason why I joined the community in the first place. So big shout out to Mino there, everyone's favorite lovable guy. So thank you again everyone for coming to our pilot episode. We will definitely take feedback in terms of anything you guys think we should fix up or maybe cut elements out of or go more in depth on. We will be coming back 2 weeks from now, so June 22nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to be going over the Ash BT cycle. So once again, thank you so much everyone, and have a great rest of your evening.
Cross, you're ugly.
Bye-bye.